Hi guys, MTech here. So I've been working on something called the bifilar monopole transmitter, and it's been based off of Konstantin Meyl's work, a German PhD physicist and electrical engineer, and he claimed he created a wireless power system that has open electric field lines. He had an open monopolar transmitter that had open electric field lines, and he claimed he mastered the loadless wireless power effects, and he claimed he has a fully self-sustaining device based off of a transmitter that has open electric field lines. So here's how it looks. Very simple transmitter, very small. It's run off of a 1 MJE 1309 transistor. The biasing resistor here ensures we get oscillation, and this tuning capacitor ensures we have powerful oscillation. And the transmitter has two modes of operation, a very low power capacitive form of operation, and a much higher power of brute force oscillation, where the heatsink will get hot and it will be a bit more lossy, but the wireless power effects are more powerful. So I'll turn it on, and this is my multimeter. We're going to read the current flowing through it, and I'll hook it up. It should kick on. Make sure this is in frame. And this is what the receiver coil looks like. It's a tune for resonance, this receiver coil. I thought to myself, if you're trying to capture twice the amount of wireless power you're putting into the device, then why not make your receiver coil twice as big? And what's happening now is I think the system needs a bit of a kickstart to activate by contacting a load to the base and collector of the device. I had a little wireless power plug I had right here. So see how we can't read any power flowing through the device? It's probably in that very efficient mode of operation I was talking about, where it is very slightly giving off power. It's almost like the transmitter's in a standby mode, and this is the very weak, very efficient mode of operation. This mode has to be studied. This is probably, if free energy were to be tapped, this is probably where it would come from, this spot right here. And would probably master that by using a MOSFET instead of a transistor. But I've made tons of these. Every time I switch to a MOSFET, the device doesn't oscillate. I'll need a feedback coil. It just doesn't work. I'm thinking of switching to a flyback driver. But the driver I'm using now seems to be the most simple, seems to work. Every time I switch to a MOSFET, I just can't get the thing to work, but this mode of operation seems to be the most efficient when it's in very low power mode, and the meter can't even detect current flow through it. It's probably less than 1 milliamp when it's in this mode, and that mode is attributed to the heavy earth connection on the bottom here. Without that earth connection, you can't even see the wireless power effects. You still get them if you touch it to the device, but you can't really see them when you get the light close to the wires. Once I had the earth ground here, the heavy earth ground, then you see the effects. And the heavy earth ground is just grounded to the other end of the bifilar coil, opposite of the transistor. So to get this thing oscillating in high power mode, which is a little inefficient, but the effects are very phenomenal, I have to connect a temporary load to the base and collector of our transistor. That diode there, I forgot the name of it. It's it improves the power efficiency, but our efficiency still could be better. It's a I can't remember the name, but I'll think of it. It's a diode that improves the efficiency. Damn, that's bugging me. I can't think of the name. But anyway, I'll connect this load up, and it will trigger the system into higher power mode. And we're now consuming a little under half an amp. The effects are much more powerful now. Very powerful. This thing almost acts like a Tesla transmitter, just the extra coil of a Tesla transmitter. And when I put this receiver coil over the transmitter, watch what will happen. So I'm calling this thing the monopolar transmitter. And while it's doing that, it's also creating stunning wireless power effects, especially near the battery. Even near any large plane of metal, the effects are still present. So Konstantin Meyl was not wrong. And yeah, I've been good lately, just working, doing a lot of research into this stuff. And all the ancient, if you go back and really review all the books from all the ancient electrical engineering masters, all the books from Eric Dollard, Steinmetz, Heaviside, and even modern electrical titans like Ken Wheeler, Theorapsis, that's what he goes by. All these people agree that free energy is possible, and a self-sustaining energy device is possible. And the device will somehow draw power from the environment by rapid switching, pure rapid switching. So when I touch this little light to the metal here, the transmitter doesn't feel any electrical load from that. So this effect you're seeing right here has to be mastered and perfected. And I've also been digging deep into the Don Smith stuff. I think Don Smith faked a lot of his demonstrations too. And the reason I say that is because in one of his videos where he demonstrates himself running a set of 100 light bulbs, I wrote down the exact math and I had AI help me debunk it with the math. So in one of his videos, his demonstration videos, he was at a Tesla conference and he had a suitcase device and he would not let anyone look inside it, which in science is a huge red flag. Why is he so petrified if people look inside it? So anyway, the key that gave his device away is being fake. Now, I'm not saying free energy is impossible. I'm saying Don Smith was most likely lying and he faked a lot of his stuff. Because all the electrical engineers of old, in their theories and their works, they all put it in the math that free energy is possible. And at the end of the day, it has to be possible because that's what, and this is going to sound crazy, but that's what the UFOs probably run on, and field propulsion craft. And the Navy and the Air Force have very good pictures of field propulsion craft that David Fravor took from his jets. And they had it on FLIR, 4K footage. And the only thing that could power a field propulsion craft, also known as a UFO, has to be a free energy device. There's nothing else that could power it. So anyway, back to Don Smith. What gave it away to me as fake, and I wrote down the timestamps for his video in the math, and I can include that in the video description and the links. What gave away Don Smith as being fake to me, and the math proves it, is he had his device and he ran a bank of 100 100-watt light bulbs, basically for barely under 2 minutes. And when he ran those light bulbs for barely under 2 minutes, the voltage on his the voltage output from his device that the technicians were monitoring, the voltage output dropped, and then it started to come back up, and then it dropped again. So as he hooked up the incandescent light bulbs, as he ran them, the voltage output on his device dropped, and then it slowly started to rise again, and then it slowly began to drop again. Now, what that screams to me, and this is very, very inherent to inverters, AC power inverters, that turn DC 12 or 24 volts to 120 volt AC. This is what screamed fake to me about it. When he ran that load, his voltage first sagged very bad, which is typical of an inverter and a battery system. It's adjusting to the load. Your voltage sags because it's running a heavy load. And then as his light bulbs warmed up and less power had to go through them as they warmed up because he was running incandescent light bulbs. The voltage slowly began to climb, also as the battery adjusted to the load. And then, as the battery began to discharge normally, his voltage began to drop again. And in that demonstration video, he got very nervous. He looked nervous, and he unplugged the load after barely 2 minutes of operation. He just barely hit the 2-minute mark to run that. Now, back then, what they had for batteries, NICAD batteries just came out, the RC batteries. He could have had that suitcase filled with a custom-built or even just regular off-the-shelf NICAD 12-volt or 24-volt battery pack. And to run that load, he probably had a custom-built inverter circuit, or he modified an inverter circuit, where the low-voltage cutoff was removed, meaning his inverter wouldn't shut off when his battery voltage hit like 10 or 9 volts. And he probably did that so he could run his system to give the illusion it was free energy when it was not. I'm very much so on the fence about Don Smith, because no one, to my record, has ever seen his energy devices run for a long period of time. No one's ever seen inside the box while it's operating a load. That's a huge red flag. He also misled people. He said you have to focus on the magnetic aspect of wireless power transfer to get your cool effects. That is not true. You don't focus on the magnetic aspect. You focus on a monopolar transmitter that has open electric field lines that shoot off of it like a laser beam. The field lines don't return back to it. You want to make what Konstantin Meyl, the German PhD physicist, says is a open scalar system, and you make that open scalar system with very sharp, rapid impulses, like you're striking a bell with a hammer. You want a very sharp, abrupt DC impulse that's pure, and I'm gonna try and achieve that with MOSFETs, but I keep struggling to get my transmitter to oscillate with MOSFETs, but I'll eventually get there. And this is how the receiver coil looks. So I'm very skeptical on Don Smith just because of the only demonstration he showed with his device, the suitcase device. He never let anyone look inside it, big red flag. He ran a 100-watt load for 2 minutes, which you could easily do from NICAD batteries, from an inverter circuit that had the low voltage cutoff sensor removed, which would stop it from shutting off if his battery voltage got too low. And what else? Well, what gave it away for me was the evidence. The fact the load he was running, the 100-watt load, his voltage dropped and then climbed again and then began to drop steadily. And as it was dropping badly, he quickly unplugged his device. And he said he was worried about it overheating and some more tuning had to be done. Also, when he switched his device on, it made the inherent sign that an inverter circuit would make under high power. It made the sound a square wave inverter would make at high power. So I think he tricked the audience with an inverter, a dirty square wave inverter that he modified and removed the low voltage cutoff from. I think Don Smith faked that demonstration completely. As someone who's engaged in electrical engineering on the side, I fully believe Don Smith faked that demonstration. And he also misled people. For whatever reason, I don't know. After reviewing all the evidence and all the math, I think a lot of what Don Smith did was fraudulent. And it's sad to say and see that. But my analysis and evidence points to that a lot of what Don Smith did was fraudulent and a big misdirection. And why he did it, I don't know. Maybe it was to mislead people, but at the end of the day, the ancient math, the ancient theories point to free energy being possible. We just have to figure out how to engineer it. But as far as Don Smith goes, everything points to him being a fraud. From everything I've heavily reviewed. Why is it all the people who've tried to replicate what he has, why have they all failed so far? You're telling me not one person can get what he has working? The reason is because it doesn't work. He was a fraud. And I took down very advanced notes, the timestamps of his video, exactly how long he ran the load, the characteristics of what the load was acting like when he ran it, how the technicians in the audience that tested what he was doing didn't seem that intelligent or technical adept either. They're like, oh yeah, wow, it's running the bulbs. One guy didn't even know how to work his multimeter properly in the audience. This was like the 90s. The internet barely existed, and the technicians didn't really quite know what they were doing. But and that light is getting hot, and we're consuming a little over half an amp. So this thing could be tuned much more efficient. If I put a capacitor in parallel with the base and collector, it gets much more efficient. It'll get almost twice as efficient, but the problem I have is if I don't have the coil perfectly centered over the transmitter, the load tends to shut off and the system won't oscillate a lot. So I have to perfect my oscillator design a bit for the transmitter. And yeah, I know I'm talking a lot, but I wanted to really debunk that based on the evidence. A lot of people just want to blindly believe what they see, but you have to approach this stuff with a retroductive mindset that's focused like a sword or a laser beam that can cut through bullshit. And the way you get that mindset is by following a lot of ancient theories that Ken Wheeler pushes out that'll teach you to cut through most bullshit like a laser beam or sword. So, what Don Smith tricked us on is he said to focus on the magnetic aspect when you build a wireless power system. You don't do that for magic effects. You focus on an open electric field where the lines of force don't return back into the transmitter. You want open lines of force. Like Tesla said, it would become a scalar system where longitudinal waves are what looks like laser beams emit from the transmitter, and they can create loadless wireless power effects. So that's the first misdirect from Don Smith. The second one is he never let anyone look into his devices as they were operating, which is a big red flag in science. And when he ran those loads, his 100-watt loads, he had a bank of light bulbs set up on one demonstration. And when he ran it for barely 2 minutes, and a NICAD battery pack in the suitcase with an inverter circuit that has the low voltage cutoff removed could easily do that. And what's completely characteristic of happening, if he did run it off that, which he did, the evidence in math points towards it, his voltage output that the technician was reading, the voltage output sagged as he ran the light bulbs when he first started them. It sagged. And then his voltage began to climb as the light bulbs heated up and consumed less power. And then his voltage once again began to decline. And then as it was declining, after 2 minutes, he unplugged it. He ran the 100-watt loads for barely 2 minutes. He just hit the 2-minute mark. And a NICAD battery pack could run a 1 kilowatt load of 100-watt heat lights. And that's what he ran. And he did no further demonstration after that. And he wouldn't let anyone look in the suitcase. He wouldn't let anyone review it behind stage, behind closed doors. It would hurt his investing interest, blah, blah, blah. He faked it. All analysis points to he faked that demonstration. He completely faked it. So, based on AI analytical tools and me as an electrical engineer and what I saw and how the people in the audience, the technicians, didn't even know how to really work their meter, it was fake. He faked it. Now, do I personally believe in free energy? The answer is yes. And the reason I believe in it is because UFOs and field propulsion craft have to be powered by it for what they can do, the maneuvers they do. And the other reason I believe in it is ancient electrical engineering math, all from the masters, point to free energy systems existing by drawing in energy from a different dimension, from counter space, or from the environment. That's why earth grounding is so important. And what's sad is Don Smith was very, very highly knowledgeable in electrical engineering as well. But why he would fake one of his demonstrations, I don't know. Like, I've seen very impressive wireless power devices, but I don't bullshit people. I don't have a fully self-sustaining device yet. I don't have that. I don't have any form of self-sustaining device yet. That's all part of the research. The closest I ever got was the ringer system that sat on this board and produced 500, I think it was 5 or 600 watts. And I had it as an outside test about a year ago, and that was very efficient, but it wasn't self-sustaining. I think I got it to 97% efficiency. I have the records somewhere on my computer. It was either 97 or 97.5% efficient with wireless power effects that didn't put a load on the transmitter. The current problem with these systems is you can get an illusionary form of overunity, meaning you have a transmitter consuming, say, half a watt of power, but then you can wirelessly light up 2 or 3 watts worth of LEDs separately, each separately lit up, earth grounded. But if you try and collect all that power and combine it and then feed it back to the transmitter's battery, some kind of weird shit goes on where you can't collect it properly, or things get out of tune when you try and combine all the collection methods, and then you try and feed back it to the battery, and it just gets a little out of tune and doesn't quite work. But if you have each load separately grounded away from the transmitter, just the right spot, you'll get what appears to be an over-unity wireless power output at each individual load, because the total wireless loads you're running will exceed what your transmitter can output for power. But the moment you try and combine all those loads and put it to real work, it either gets detuned or doesn't quite work properly. So the key is to turn that massive amount of resonant reactive power into real power without having the impedance of the wireless load reflect back on the transmitter, and for the transmitter to feel that load. And the way you build a transmitter, and I know I'm talking a lot, but I have a lot to say in this update video, and the way you build a transmitter to not feel the wireless load, like, you want a transmitter to broadcast wireless power, and you want the receivers to output power without putting a load on the transmitter. The way you do that is you'd most likely need a 3-coil transmitter system, or a 1-coil, perfectly tuned extra coil system. You would need just the 1 coil, or 3 coils, because Tesla's magnifying transmitter had 3 coils, and that's very hot. And his first 2 coils would decouple cause from effect with the 3rd coil, and it would ring the 3rd coil like a bell to create a magnification of energy. So you can either do it with 1 coil that's as tall as it is wide, has a very high Q factor, or you can do it with the 3-coil system. And the 3-coil system would probably give you better results, much better. So that's the update video. I know I talked a lot. We're trying to debunk all the bullshit. MTech's mission statement is to design wireless power systems as energy efficient as possible, to push the boundary of what's possible, to debunk the bullshit, to get to the bottom of everything, and to explore any form of technology that seems very interesting. And you guys asked me to analyze Maxwell Chikumbutsu again, the African inventor who claims to have free energy from radio frequency. Again, I'm skeptical on him. He's the same thing. He won't let anyone look into his device to see how it works. That immediately, for me, is a red flag. Wicked skeptical. I would take that with a grain of salt. And why do all his devices have big electrical cooling fans in them? This type of technology, when it works, everything runs cool, so he wouldn't need big cooling fans. I have to look more into him, but from the surface, what I could dig up, he doesn't seem that good either. I'd be skeptical of him, but at the end of the day, free energy does have to exist. The math points to it. The ancient math, the ancient titans of electrical engineering of old, and some of modern, all agree and all theorize free energy is possible. The math points to it. The UFOs and field propulsion craft have to utilize that as an energy source. There's nothing else that can power a craft like that. So, again, I know I'm talking a lot, and our mission statement is to create the most energy efficient wireless power transmitters as simply and elegantly as possible that decouple cause from effect. And if one day it ever does become self-sustaining, that'd be great. Hopefully it will get there one day. If I can perfect the circuit to be MOSFET driven at the sharpest, cleanest impulse without using a transistor, which acts very resistive in this form of power mode, then we'll be in good shape. And this was an update video talking about things, showing things off. I'll show you a good look at the receiver coil. It's nothing special, just a very high Q coil. And I had the idea, if I'm trying to capture twice the power off this thing that it's emitting, why not make a resonant receiver coil that's almost 4 times the size of the transmitter? And I'll give you a good look at the transmitter. And you could kind of call it a monopolar transmitter. Very powerful, very simple. And I could make it a lot more efficient than what it is, but when I do the modifications to make it more efficient, it likes to shut off under heavy wireless load, which tells me the design of it isn't quite perfected, because you want to perfect that loadless wireless power transfer effect. And this coil should probably also be a much bigger diameter to sit further outside the transmitter to strain it less. But nonetheless, this is a very powerful effect. And under heavy load, it consumes 0.65 amps. So we can see that there is a load put on it, and that LED, I believe this is a 5 watt 12 volt LED pushed to the absolute limit. Here's what they exactly are. So this transmitter circuit could be a lot more efficient. It's just a rough build right now. It was the proof of concept and it works. I'll disconnect it, give you a good look at how it looks. The emitters are negative connection, bottom opposite end of the other end of the bifilar coil is where we ground it. Just a dead simple coil. Here's how it looks. There's actually a lot of heat buildup in the coil because I've never run it this long before for a test. Yeah, there's actually heat buildup in the coil. So we have a lot of reactive energy sloshing back and forth between the two coils, creating heat. That's bad. So we might need a better design, but that's the rough design of it, how it looks. Ideally, it wouldn't even have a heatsink. It would be better coil build, generate virtually no heat as it runs, and produce intense wireless power effects from clean switching MOSFETs, which I've yet to get working. I keep struggling with MOSFETs. They don't want to oscillate the circuit. The one time I got it close, it gave off super weak wireless power effects, but I couldn't get the oscillation strong. So that's that, and thank you everyone for tuning in. I don't want anyone to feel discouraged if you're a big fan of Don Smith, but all the math and analysis of evidence that I dug deep into points to Don Smith being an absolute fraudster, at least on his demonstrations. He hoaxed it. I can say, as an electrical engineer, I can confidently say, at least on that demonstration that he did, he faked it. Don Smith faked that demonstration. He had NICAD batteries in that suitcase using an inverter circuit with the low voltage cutoff protection removed. So he would have ran those batteries until he would have ran that 1 kilowatt of light bulbs until his battery dropped to nothing and died. Probably to 5 or 6 volts. Because the low voltage cutoff in an inverter shuts off your inverter when your battery hits 9 or 10 volts DC, so your battery doesn't completely die and become unrecoverable. So that's that, and at the end of the day, free energy is probably possible. We just have to figure out the correct generators to build to tap into it, the correct arch forms. So yeah, that's that. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, join our Patreon, support us. We are on the quest to build the utmost energy efficient wireless power transmitters. The utmost energy efficient Tesla coils too. We're looking to move away from the Joule Thief transmitter system and go into probably a flyback driver system using MOSFETs, which should be the most efficient, that will produce very abrupt unidirectional self-oscillating discharges, but it'll be a self-oscillating unidirectional DC that'll run the transmitter. Very clean switching. I got a few ZVSs too that came in, but I then realized a ZVS doesn't make an abrupt, clean DC switching. It makes very clean sine waves to drive a transmitter. That's not what we want. We want very sharp, abrupt DC switching like a self-oscillating flyback driver would do. So, thank you everyone. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, join the Patreon. And maybe one day we will have a fully wireless power self-sustaining energy system. And thank you everyone. Take care.